Accepted, right? So good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Two Decades of Tsunami, How the Mangrove Ecosystems in Asia Are Doing. My name is Chamna Ketty, and I'm honored to serve as the host for this important discussion, and I extend my gratitude to all of you for joining with us today. So this webinar is the timely reflection as we recently marked 2 decades since 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, one of the deadliest in the natural disaster history. We know that the tsunami have devastating effect on millions of human lives across Asia, but it also has significantly impacted the ecosystems, including mangroves, which are, we know that the vital natural barriers against these disasters. So this webinar is set out to explore various aspects of how the mangrove ecosystems are recovering and exploring how the 2004 tsunami has changed various aspects of mangrove ecosystems in Asia through particular case studies from regions presented by eminent speakers. So we'll be having a 15-minute discussion session and also a 5-minute question and Q&A session. So without any further delay, I'm calling upon Dr. Nehru Prabhakaran for the welcome address.
I'm sorry, but we cannot hear you, Nehru. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Shamna, for the introduction. And it's wonderful to have this webinar finally started. The inception of this came just a month ago when me, Amir, and Frida, we met for a meeting in Abu Dhabi. So it's a timely reminder that 2 decades have passed and we have hardly much known about how the ecosystems have recovered over these years. Of course, a lot of things happened, a lot of studies have happened, but at the regional level, there are many countries in Asia have gone through this tsunami and devastation, but we have hardly any information about how these ecosystems are doing over this last 2 decades. So this particular webinar is in fact put together just to remind us and try to understand how different countries, mangroves in different countries are coping up with the tsunami, and how the policies in each of these countries have shaped mangrove restoration, mangrove conservation over these years. So without much delay, I would like to start up with the other sessions. Thank you for the opportunity, Shamna.
Thank you, Naru sir. Next, we have the inaugural address. For that, I would like to invite Mr. Virendra Tiwari, Director, Wildlife Institute of India. Sir, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning to all. Welcome to the webinar. In the outset, I would like to congratulate the organizers for bringing out this very important knowledge sharing webinar on 2 decades of tsunami, how the mangrove ecosystems in Asia are doing. Recognizing the critical role that mangrove ecosystem plays in regulating the coastal biodiversity and the mangrove marine resources, many countries have come forward to make special effort to ensure the protection, restoration, and management of the mangrove ecosystem. We all know that frequency of natural disasters like cyclone, flooding, and erratic rainfall are seeing continuous increase over the past decades. This stark increase has particularly impacting the coastal and marine ecosystem that are highly important to maintain the marine biodiversity and sustaining the livelihood of millions of the people across the world, and particularly the densely populated Asian countries. This also urges us to create enough scientific information on coastal ecosystem to better understand the situation and plan appropriate adaptive measures to ensure the sustainability of coastal resources. Until recent years, the scientists have debated the importance and effectiveness of mangrove forest in providing protection against natural disasters such as cyclones and tsunamis. However, the recent studies from various parts of the world, and particularly the lessons from 2004 tsunami, have served as a wake-up call highlighting the critical role of mangroves in disaster mitigation and resilience. This shift in perspective is evident in the strong policy intervention, legal frameworks, and conservation efforts dedicated to safeguarding the mangrove ecosystems. A notable example is the Government of India's centrally sponsored scheme launched in June 2023 titled the Mangrove Initiative for Shoreline Habitats and Tangible Incomes, in short, MISTI. This ambitious program aims to expand mangrove cover by approximately 540 square kilometers by 2028 along the Indian coastal lines. It also seeks to protect coastal communities and livelihoods, enhance socio-economic well-being through new infrastructure, and promote nature-based tourism. With this, I hope that this webinar will serve as a valuable platform for the stakeholders of the mangrove ecosystem, fostering insightful discussions on future needs, actions, and strategies to conserve mangrove. Let us work together to ensure the well-being of our communities while advancing the conservation and sustainable management of mangrove ecosystems for generation to come. I wish a great success to this important webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights about this topic. So now we have the special address by Dr. Muhammad Basyouni. So Dr. Muhammad Basyouni is a professor in the Center of Excellence of Mangrove University of Sumatra, Indonesia. His current researches focus on understanding, establishing the thresholds of mangrove pioneer species in North Sumatra, implications for restoration and climate change. So I would like to call upon Dr. Muhammad Basyouni for the special address.
Thank you, Sanma. Good morning, everyone. So greeting from Indonesia, Medan, North Sumatra Province. So I think it's honor for me to be here today to discuss a topic that hold immense significance not only for the communities, coastal community, but also the state of the mangrove ecosystem in Asia, 2 decades after the catastrophic tsunami of 2004. So the mangrove demonstrated their critical roles as natural barriers during the tsunami. There are so many research regarding the disaster, so that the area with intact mangrove forests suffer less damage compared to the region where mangrove has been degraded or removed. So the mangrove ecosystem acted as buffer, reducing the force of waves and preventing further devastation. This catalyzed significant international interest in mangrove restoration and conservation. And also, I noted at the progress over 2 decades, there are a lot of efforts to rehabilitate and expand mangrove ecosystem. Some keys like restoration projects, countries like Indonesia, India, Sri Lanka, Thailand have initiated large-scale mangrove restoration program. The second, policy and legislation. Government have introduced policies to protect mangrove, often incorporating with national climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction strategies. The third, community involvement is very important. Local communities have been at the heart of many successful mangrove restoration projects, and scientific advancement like the advances in remote sensing, GIS mapping, molecular tool like eDNA metabarcoding to monitor mangrove health and biodiversity. Also, blue carbon, blue economy, blue food is very important surrounding in our mangrove ecosystem. And also success story and lesson learned serve like many inspiration like in Indonesia, Vietnam, India, Sundarbans, Philippines, and other countries impacted from the tsunami. But we need to also make for way forward to ensure that mangrove thrive in the coming decades, like promote sustainable livelihoods, enhance research and monitoring, strengthen the policy frameworks, raise awareness, and also encourage regional collaboration like we do this morning for webinar. So mangrove are more than trees. They are our allies in building resilience against disaster, mitigating climate change, and sustaining biodiversity. 2 decades after the tsunami, we made strides, but challenges persist. Let this webinar serve as a reminder of our collective responsibility to protect and restore this vital ecosystem. Together, through science, collaboration, and unwavering commitment, we ensure that the mangrove continue to thrive for the generation to come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights about this topic. And I'm sure the upcoming talks that we have will give more idea about this. So now we will start up with the technical session. So before I told that we have 50 minutes talk and plus 5 minutes for the Q&A session. So I kindly request the audience, if you have any questions, you can post it in the chat box. And later, after the 15-minute talk, every 15-minute talk, we will have the Q&A section and we'll discuss about these questions. So first of all, we have our first speaker, Dr. Hamza Latif, Dr. Engineer Hamza Latif. He's a senior lecturer, Faculty of Geosciences and Technology, Institute of Technology, Bandung, Indonesia. He have done his PhD in physical oceanography from Tokyo University, Japan. and his research interests align in developing better information for tsunami hazard assessment in Indonesia. And so I would like to call upon Dr. Engineer Hamza Latif for his valuable insights, sharing his valuable insights.
Okay, thank you, Samna. I would like to introduce myself. Actually, I'm not expert in mangrove. My background actually about the tsunami modeling. And I'm very happy to be here and can discuss more about the function of mangrove as obstacle. My topic is modeling of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami and role of mangrove to reduce tsunami. And then this my outline. First is impact of tsunami and earthquake on coastal vegetation. Here, not only for the mangrove, but also coastal forest. And the second is file finding on the role of vegetation in reducing tsunami. And then effectiveness of vegetation to reduce tsunami. And then hydraulic experiment to formulate manning coefficient or manning roughness and impact force. And the fifth is modeling of the 2004 Indian Ocean. And then I tried to apply the parameter of green belt to look at the effectiveness of mangrove of coastal forests to reduce tsunami. And then the last is mangrove and coastal forest planting activity by the government and communities. And then the impact of tsunami and earthquake on coastal vegetation. So we can see here some evidence of the impact of tsunami and earthquake on coastal vegetation. First is you can see here vegetation knocked out from around 15 or 20 meter tsunami height in Jantan Coast, in Aceh province, and other is Lokna. You can hear the forest fall down and also root up. And another this also in Lokna by the Indian Ocean tsunami. And the third is you can see here first line of tree knocked down by the 7 meter in height in 2006 West Java tsunami. And then you can see here also mangrove dry after 10 months. I mean 10 months after the tsunami because the uplift and no water enter to this mangrove forest. And you can see here the mangrove die due to the uplift of the earthquake, due to earthquake. And then this we can see field finding on the role vegetation in reducing tsunami. This one sample, the role of vegetation, you can see here behind the forest, the houses still stand up, but another place here, another location, the houses swept by tsunami. And this also 2004 Indian tsunami in West Nias. And then we have also case here in by the Iconos imagery. Here we can see that the house behind the coastal forest still safe, but another place without vegetation here, also the houses swept. You can see here before and after tsunami. And the next is this also in West Java. You can see here this the forest or trees, and then you can see the tsunami height in front of the trees is around 6 meter, and then by the forest it can be reduced up to the 1.6 meter here, with the forest thick about maybe 40 meters. And then another, the last is Palu tsunami. So we can see here also that the house is safe behind the forest. This forest, length of this coastal mangrove forest about 75 meter, and then the tsunami height in front of the forest about 5 meter, and then tsunami can be reduced up to 1 meter at the housing area. And then here we can see here the house here also destroyed by tsunami, where without mangrove. And then we try to look at the effectiveness of vegetation to reduce tsunami. This one, Professor Suto, 1987, he is my professor. And then he proposed that the positive opinion of mangrove, of coastal forest to reduce tsunami. For example, here effective because it stop driftwood and other floatage, and then it reduce water flow, velocity, in induction water depth, and it provide life-saving means by catching person carry out of by tsunami, and it collect wind-blown sand and raise the sand dune, and then which act as a natural barrier against tsunami. But another, we can see here, we can see the case that the mangrove or coastal forest can reduce tsunami, but another negative opinion. A forest may be ineffective against the huge tsunami, and worse, trees themselves could become destructive force to house if cut down by tsunami. And then we can see here one case also in Aceh. So the forest or the trees cut off or root off, and then root up, and then become the floating material and destroy the house. And then this experiment, I mean field survey, we can see the diameter of trees only can reduce for only can stand with the tsunami height of 40.65 meter. And then for the tsunami height 7 meter, we need the diameter around 34.3 centimeter, and more than 10 meter, we need the diameter around 100 centimeter. And then if we want to reduce tsunami height 3 meter, we need at least the thickness of forest about 20 meter. And if the tsunami height is 6 meter, we need at least 100 meter in distance of the thickness of coastal forest. And then we can see here, like in Sendai, this tsunami more than 8 meter. And then we can see here that the forest or coastal forest cannot or do not effective to reduce tsunami. So next, we try to conducted the hydraulic experiment to formulate many coefficient and impact force. And in 2000, I conducted experiment like this with the hydraulic channel around 100 meter. And then we put a model here like mangrove with trunk, canopy, and also root. And then we found the mean roughness coefficient like this. And then, of course, depend on occupied volume of the obstacle. So here we don't consider only for mangrove, but also other obstacle like coastal forest building and other. And then we have also here the impact force. CM here is impact force, and we have the formulation like this. And then from this mining roughness and impact force, we can try, we apply for the in mathematical modeling. Here we back again to the 2004 Indian tsunami. We try to develop model like this. This the subfault, and you can see, and then this slip distribution of subfault, and then this the parameter each subfault of the Indian Ocean earthquake with the propagation of rupture velocity around 0.9 kilometer per second. And then this the my numerical model of the Indian Ocean tsunami. And then, of course, we try to look more detail in Banda Aceh, and then we use nested model like this. And then we have this, the Banda Aceh, you can see here, and then this Lokna, and then you can see here the propagation of tsunami inundated the Banda Aceh. And then we have also field measure here, field survey, and then we compare between the simulation and then field survey here. We compare the tsunami height, and then this the if you can see, if you want to see also the simulation for Indian Ocean up to India or Africa, Mozambique and Tanzania here, and then we can also calculate tsunami height due to the Indian Ocean. And then this we try to use the formulation. We enter the mining roughness here and also impact force here in this mathematical modeling. And then we develop some scenario. First is scenario 1 is initial condition without intervention here. And then the scenario 2, we plant coastal forest here along 500 meters, and because the water, the tsunami current still enter here through the river, so we need to develop also other scenario with river gate. And then we also develop scenario 4 combined between coastal forest with river gate and also embankment behind the mangrove forest. And then you can see here the domain simulation like this. And then we have the inundation area. This the scenario 1, this the scenario 2, scenario 3, and scenario 4. And then we can see here that the inundation area here about the 57 square kilometer, and then with coastal forest here, we can reduce around 30.2%. And then with coastal forest and river gate, we can reduce around 42.8%. And combined with the coastal forest, river gate, and embankment, we can reduce around 53%. And mostly this area is the coastal area, we allow the tsunami inundated this area. So we can see here that the mangrove and other intervention here can reduce tsunami height. And then the last is the mangrove and coastal forest planting activity by the government and community. So Indonesian government give more attention about the replanting coastal forest and also tsunami, also maybe related to the climate change. And here one of the, you can see here the coastal forest here. And then this planted just after the Indian Ocean tsunami. So I come here again in 2015, and then we can see here the coastal forest like this, very thick and very, very good for environment. Okay, that's all my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation and to taking us through the dangerous effects of tsunami in Indonesian livelihood, and also for sharing your research ideas, like how you have instructed the modeling and for learning about the disaster. The tsunami inundation model and the maps were really interesting. Thank you so much. And now, if there is any questions for him, you can type in the chat.
I think maybe no question.
Okay, so there is one question, sir. Don Reef from Don Reef, Czech, Malaysia. He have asked that, may I know the simulation software to do the simulation? Can you hear me?
Yeah, pardon?
Sir, Don Reef, Czech, Malaysia have asked that, may I know the simulation software to do the simulation?
You mean simulation to Malaysia or other?
Yeah, I think so, sir. It's in
Sorry,
the chat.
sorry.
Yeah, sir, the application software. He's asking about this application software.
Application of software, we use the Tsunami. This the software from Tohoku University. So we modified some to what, like apply the binding roughness and other coefficient related to the obstacle. In this case, is mangrove or coastal forest, but we can use also for like building and other obstacle. Yeah, so in this case, we consider only we consider mangrove as the obstacle only. But you can use also other software like Mike 20 or 3DD or ComCode and other. But very important here, not the software, but how to adjust the earthquake parameter as tsunami source and also the mining roughness during the tsunami propagate on land or through the on land and other mining roughness like obstacle.
Thank you, sir. So if there is no any further questions, we can go to
how to install the experiment. And actually my experiment I conducted when I was pursuing my PhD in Sendai and Tohoku University. So we have very good facilities at that time. But for a small case, sometimes also we do in my university or my lab. But yeah, I think this normal model for hydraulic we generate wave and then we put the obstacle and then we can measure wave in front of the forest model, and also we measure inside and also behind the models. I think this we can use and another difference with mangrove and different. Yeah, of course. We can make like very detailed model like root, trunk, and also canopy of voltage and other. I think we can, and then we can calculate. Yeah. You can you can see my paper related to this issue, how to formulate the mangrove model or tree model to reduce or to analyze the mining roughness and also impact force.
Thank you, sir. So there
Yeah,
is
but
questions in the chat.
sometimes because the different character of tsunami and wind waves so different also the analysis. Yeah, we can usually if we analyze the wind wave we usually use the spectrum analysis.
Thank you so much, sir. So there is other questions in the chat. I would like to if you can reply in the chat itself because of the time. We have to move to the next section.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I kindly request all the participants to post the questions in the chat box. So we will be having a 5-minute discussion after every speaking section. So we will discuss about the questions. Next, we will move to our next speaker. We have Dr. Nehru Prabhakaran, Scientist, Wildlife Institute of India. He'll be talking about mangrove response to the coupled effects of tsunami, coastal subsidence, and uplift, the unique case of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Dr. Nehru is a scientist at Department of Landscape Level Planning and Management, Wildlife Institute of India since 2018. He has completed PhD in year 2012 from Bharatiya University. His PhD focused on the succession of coastal vegetation after tsunami in Nicobar Island. He has a number of prestigious awards to his credit. He is the recipient of Leben's Dad Post Scholarship Fellowship, Germany, and DST Inspired Faculty Award for the DST India. So I would like to call upon Dr. Nehru Prabhakaran for his valuable insights, sharing his valuable insights. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shamna. I hope I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yeah, yes, sir. You are audible. You can carry on.
Thank you. So let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible.
Thank you. Thank you, Shamna. So again, it was wonderful to follow up with Professor Hamza's presentation coming from Indonesian experiences of how to mitigate what are the kind of vegetation that have been effective in mitigating the forces of the tsunami. So in the next 15 minutes, what I would try to do is the Andaman Nicobar Island, which is very close to the other close landmass to the Sumatra, which also experienced very interesting disturbance regime during the 2004 tsunami. As you can see from this particular complex background image, you have mangroves, mangrove recruitment, and you could see all the logs, and then you could see the dead trees on the background. These dead trees are actually the mangroves, and these are why these dead trees you could see here, and what kind of devastation the Nicobar group of islands in particular has undergone during the tsunami is what I would like to focus in this presentation. So, as far as mangroves in Andaman Nicobar Islands are concerned, they are very much similar to the Southeast Asia's structural complexity. They are really tall mangroves. The rainfall is good, so the mangroves are also having a luxuriant growth. And all across the Andaman Nicobar Islands is one of the sites with high carbon stocks or high diversity of mangroves. Just to give you some statistics, the Andaman Nicobar Islands, largely it is uninhabited places, so there is no anthropogenic pressure per se. So largely these landscapes holded a pristine mangroves, and around 615 square kilometers of mangroves all across this place. Often the canopy reaches 30 meters. So that kind of an indication of how healthy these mangroves. And of course, these landscape being part of the entire Southeast Asian network is one of the high species rich mangrove zone. Rhizophora, Bruguiera, and Soneraceae kind of species were the most dominant. In Nicobar group of islands, especially, the mangroves play a very critical role as a sustenance ecosystem for the indigenous communities. The Nicobar group of islands have two indigenous communities, the Nicobaris and Champins. Both the communities utilize mangrove resources. So, why I would see the Nicobar Islands being quite unique is you could see the Nicobar Islands are much closer to the epicenter of the tsunami, epicenter of the earthquake, and the Andaman Islands are not too far from that. These two islands are the first landmass just after Sumatra to experience the tsunami waves, and also as these islands are part of this entire rift line of this earthquake, these islands have undergone, in addition to the high intensity tsunami waves, they also experienced a huge change in land movements. For example, if you consider this plain as the pre-tsunami landmass, the Andaman Islands have uplifted or elevated about 1.4 meters at the maximum. There are many places which undergone a lesser uplift regime, whereas the Nicobar Islands have subsided. Much of the Nicobar Islands have undergone subsidence of up to 2.8 meters. It's varying, but more than 1 meter of subsidence was recorded all across Nicobar group of islands. So this particular image would give you a quick recap of uplift and subsidence. You could see the northern part of Andaman have undergone uplift, whereas the southern part of this entire archipelago has undergone a subsidence. And you could clearly see that, like the previous presenter has pointed out, the tsunami wave intensity is very high in Sumatra as well as in Nicobar group of islands and Andaman Islands. So what does that means to the mangroves? One thing is, these landscapes are very closer to the epicenter and experience the high intensity tsunami waves. That means almost huge amount of landscapes, you don't see any trees. All the trees that came in the came in the way of the tsunami were uprooted. And what about the landscape changes, the uplift and subsidence? In the first image, you could see the dead standing tree in the middle of the ocean is what all remained of an once existed island. So the entire island was subsided. So there is no trace of this island except this tree. And on the Nicobar Andaman group of islands, smaller islands got bigger. And the entire reef meadows, reef beds have came up. So and reef beds have become intertidal. In the below image, you could clearly see the lighthouse in the Great Nicobar Island, that is the southernmost tip of the this entire archipelago, much closer to Sumatra. This lighthouse was almost 250 to 300 meters inland, which is now almost 100 meters in the ocean. So this is the level of subsidence, and the amount of land is being lost for subsidence. So subsequently, many places, this kind of vast landscapes of mangroves what once existed as the intertidal ecosystems now become subtidal because of the subsidence. So all these mangroves have died off. There is no way they would able to recover from this shock because these are permanently inundated now. And likewise, these mangroves, these are landward mangroves. These mangroves are experiencing lesser inundation in the past, but now after the subsidence, they are experiencing a high amount of inundation. That means no longer the environmental characteristics are suitable for this place. So all these mangroves, the back mangroves, landward mangroves have died off. Especially this intensity of tsunami and subsidence, we have seen a very high impact in the bay areas. For example, this is one particular island, Kachal, in the Central Nicobar group of islands. You could see that this entire mangrove forest, which is of almost 8 square kilometers of mangrove, it just all the trees were uprooted or hardly any trees survived. Even the survived trees are died because of the subsidence. And when you have this uplift and subsidence, what happens is you consider the previous high tide line to be here. Now the high tide line is kind of shifted towards the ocean in terms of uplift, whereas the high tide line have shifted towards the landward in terms of subsidence. So the first one to be affected badly was the back mangroves. Either it is not receiving enough tidal water or it is receiving too much of tidal water. I'll show you some examples of how particularly the landward mangroves are more affected than the seaward mangroves. In a schematic representation, the middle image is what the ideal situation where how mangroves have existed. And after the uplift, you could clearly see the tidal lines have shifted. So the mangroves are also shifting. While in the subsided sites, the mangroves are shifting towards the landward side. These are some images from the North Andaman. You could clearly see that before tsunami, this entire landscape hosted a pristine mangrove patches. Now all the mangroves are died except few patches here. All the mangroves have died and terrestrial forests are taking over these landscapes. And these coral reef meadows, coral reef beds and seagrass meadows are now uplifted and paving and providing some kind of a conducive environment for mangroves to colonize. And many sites, what is happening is in the uplifted sites, you could see these dead logs are actually rhizopora. Rhizopora forest in Andaman usually comes in the seaward mangroves. Now these areas are undergoing a very less inundation regime. So all the rhizoporas have died out and landward mangroves are colonizing in this landscapes like Lumnicera racemosa kind of species. This entire North Andaman, which undergone an uplift regime, you could see that the west coast of North Andaman, which experienced something like more than 1 meter of uplift, almost 95% of mangroves we have lost in this particular place. Whereas on the east coast of North Andaman, where the uplift was about 0.5 meter or 50 centimeter, the loss wasn't that much. Around 50% of the mangroves we lost. In total, almost 74% of the mangroves were lost in this entire North Andaman island itself. What is happening in these landscapes? We have seen these reef beds coming up, and now the reef beds are getting colonized with mangroves, and very few species of mangroves started colonizing in reef beds, and you will see very expansive uplifted reef beds in the North Andaman Islands that are getting colonized with mangroves in the recent times. Whereas on the east coast of North Andaman, where the uplift was lesser, wherever you see this seabed is of mostly of a soil substratum or a muddy substratum, the colonization is much faster. Within no time, the mangroves have shifted towards ocean in response to the uplift, and a lot of vegetation is being established in these new intertidal areas. So this is one of the image. You could clearly see these are the old forest, and then followed by this old forest, which is almost this line. Now you could see all these new forests coming up, mostly of Avicennia marina species. So what did we do So in 2009, we started monitoring some of the sites in Nicobar group of islands. This particular site that you see in the background has undergone a subsidence regime. All the terrestrial forest, flat coastal forests are lost, and now the mangroves are colonizing. So we have established some long-term monitoring plots in these places to understand how over a long time, how these mangrove compositions are changing in this successional forest. And when we started, there was no background information available. So our entire sampling was just go to the place, explore the place. Hardly any trees were there. So we just counted all the trees to understand what is the composition, what kind of species are colonizing in these landscapes. Very interestingly, what we found was in Nicobar group of island, we lost almost 97% of mangroves, which this Nicobar group of island hosted 40 square kilometer of mangroves, of which just 1 square kilometer of mangrove in Car Nicobar survived. The rest of the islands have lost almost all the mangroves. And we've seen a very interesting change in pre and post tsunami mangroves, because whatever is colonizing is very different than what was existed in the past. And more interestingly, the sites where the mangroves have survived to some extent, we see that in this image, you could see that the background, you see the green color mangroves, which are rhizophora trees. These rhizophora forests, which are mostly in the high inundation region, they manage to survive in places where the subsidence were up to 1 meter, but the landward mangroves all died off. So that kind of gives an indication the landward mangroves are much more vulnerable to this kind of sudden changes in sea levels than the seaward mangroves. And we tracked some of the sites where how this remnant vegetation, whatever the vegetation that is remaining, how it is influencing the colonization in these particular places. So we found that one particular site where the vegetation survived, some 30% of the vegetation survived. Within some 15 years, the 70% of the vegetation has recovered naturally in this place. Whereas sites where there was no vegetation survived, even though there are intertidal habitats, there are hardly any propagule availability, hence there was no colonization happening. In the recent time only, there are some species started colonizing in this landscape, but the colonization in this landscape without any remnant vegetation is much, much slower than the sites with remnant vegetation. Even the number of trees that colonize is way higher in remnant vegetation, the successional sites close to the remnant vegetation than the successional sites without any remnant forest in the vicinity. And again, there are a lot of influencing factors we see in this colonization pattern, especially in this kind of bay areas where we lost all the mangroves. The colonization is being much, much slower. And we see this very few species like Lumnincera and Sonaracia started colonizing very recently, and they are now proliferating in a much better way. And only in Great Nicobar, we have some perennial rivers, and these perennial river mouths happen to have higher colonization rates than the much of the areas where you mostly have the fringing mangroves. So the perennial sources of fresh water is also in a way likely influencing these colonization rates. And we looked at the landscape features, how these landscape features are especially influencing the mangrove colonization and area expansion of mangroves. Like I said, the subsided sites, many of the subsided sites, we have lost the mangroves, but also the subsidence means there are new intertidal area being created on the intertidal in the terrestrial zones. Just you see in this Car Nicobar Island, before tsunami, the mangrove cover was 135 square kilometer, and now we see that there was almost more than 100 hectares of potential mangrove area is there, and then we have a cumulative mangrove area of 236 hectares we have in Car Nicobar, which is way higher than the pre-tsunami mangrove area, because this particular site had a lot of flat area behind the mangroves, so it allows the mangroves to expand. Whereas many of the sites in Central Nicobar, there is hardly any landward flatter areas, because most of the areas where mangrove ends, then the slopy hills starts. So in that kind of situation, there is hardly any scope for mangrove expansion or shifting towards the landward side. So these landscape features are also influencing the expansion or shrinking of mangroves. Very recently, we have seen this particular species, Abyssinia marina, started colonizing in many of the areas where there is no vegetation, and Abyssinia marina is spreading much faster. So we expect that in the very next 5-10 years, many of these areas that are having no vegetation would automatically be colonized by Abyssinia than any other species. So currently what we are doing multiple research in multiple angles of research in Andaman Nicobar Islands. One is to keep monitoring these sites to understand how the vegetation changes over time. And one of the recent addition to our thing is the faunal communities, especially the crab communities, how these crab communities are responding to these changes in sea level across the Andaman Nicobar Islands, and also how the vegetation is influencing the colonization of crab communities. And in Andaman, we have this interesting scenario of cheetal, which is an invasive species in Andaman Islands. And many of this protected area, we see that the mangrove recolonization, natural regeneration is highly impacted by cheetal. So we are trying to understand how this cheetal is influencing the overall mangrove recovery across the Andaman Nicobar group of islands. Way forward, so far we have seen only almost 21% is the potential area available for mangroves being colonized naturally. Still, there are almost 80% of the area is available. That means still there are a lot of change going to happen in the next few years. And we are very much eager to understand how this entire puzzle going to pan out. So I like to acknowledge all my students who contributed in this research. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your insightful presentation on the mangrove response to the coupled effects of tsunami, coastal uplift and subsidence, particularly in the unique context of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The way you highlighted how these natural phenomena interact with the shape mangrove ecosystem was both like thought-provoking and eye-opening. The effect of tsunamis coupled with the coastal uplift and subsidence are often complex and difficult to study, and your work offers a valuable perspective on how these forces can both negatively and positively influence the resilience of these vital coastal habitats. So now we are open for the Q&A session. If I kindly request the audience, if you have any questions to Nehru sir, you can post it in the chat box. Okay.
I see
So
that
there is one
Sudha
question.
has
Yeah.
asked one question. Considering the expansion and shrinking of mangrove Nicobar, how long do you think that mangrove can affect you for
Can affect it.
protection? Yes. So this is a highly debatable thing, because many of the places in Nicobar group of island, especially the mangroves are very fringing mangroves. They are in not like deltaic mangroves where you see one side with a very expansive mangroves. So it's a very interesting. Many of the sites where we have seen the entire stretches of mangroves, whether it is 100 meter width, 200 meter width, 500 meter width, doesn't matter. The intensity of this particular tsunami has given us a very interesting insight. Huge landscapes of mangroves been just uprooted. So that kind of provides us indication that there is some amount of a threshold even the mangroves will have. Like a previous presenter has pointed out, it highly depend on what kind of mangrove is there and what is the intensity of the wave is there. So for example, Andaman Island, the intensity of wave was very less. We don't have any uprooting of mangroves, much of the Andaman. Whereas in Nicobar Islands, almost more than 50-60% of mangroves were uprooted. So this is very site specific, and also it influenced by the intensity of the waves. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you, sir. So if there is no other questions, we'll move forward to the next speaker. So now we have Dr. K. Sunanda Kodikara, Professor, University of Rahana, Sri Lanka, to talk about mangrove restoration after tsunami lessons from Sri Lanka. Professor Sunanda Kodikara did his MSc and PhD in BUB, Belgium, specializing mangrove ecophysiology and coastal zone management. He has published 50 plus full paper publication in accredited journals and more than 100 abstract publications. Further, he has published 2 books and 3 book chapters. Currently, Sunanda is having nearly 900 citations with 13H index. Currently, he's serving as the head of Department of Botany, University of Louvain. So I would like to call upon Dr. Sunanda for sharing his valuable insights about this topic.
Okay, thank you very much and good morning to everyone. So, Dr. Nehru, can you please stop sharing your screen so then I can share my work? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, let me share the screen. Right, so good morning, everyone. And actually, thank you very much for inviting me, especially Dr. Nehru. And I'm really delighted to share some of the knowledge and insight of, normally what is going on in Sri Lanka. So I just put my title like effectiveness of mangrove restoration initiatives in Sri Lanka. Right, so I guess that we all are aware that after the tsunami that hit Southeast Asia in 2004, that most of these restoration projects sprang out and many people started to work on that, right? So that is the main factor that has really induced us to go for mangrove restoration. And I just want to show you that probably you might have seen, but before. So you can find that in red color, the whole area that was affected by tsunami. But very fortunately, we had a good cover of mangrove for this particular affected area. That means normally 50,000 people, that lived on this area, and I think because of mangroves, actually they could be able to save a lot of lives and properties as well. But the thing is that in Sri Lankan context, when we are talking about these mangrove restoration initiatives, actually normally we are having 2 main objectives. The first one is enhancing the mangrove cover. Before 2004, most of the initiatives were there with the aim of enhancing the mangrove cover. But after 2004 tsunami, the main objective was to ensure the coastal protection. But you believe me or not, in Sri Lanka, because this is one of the very good paper published in 2005 showing the high buffering capacity of mangroves. And because of this mangrove story, and most of the donors, they were very keen to pump money to Sri Lanka with the aim of restoring, because there are a lot of stories which told us that because of mangroves, that most of the lives and properties were protected. So thereafter that we had a very good interest. But the thing, actually, the pathetic situation is that the most of these initiatives went wrong due to certain reasons, right? So these are the normal general organizations who are in the process of restoring mangroves. There are some government organizations like Coastal Conservation Department, Forest Department, and especially University of Ruhuna. We are in the process of restoring mangroves and to see that whether we need some sort of restoration or not. And NARA, that is one of the best top institution that we can find in Sri Lanka. At the same time, you can find that a lot of non-government organizations, they came and they also started to do a lot of plantations. And apart from that, there are many environmentalists and many people who are having some genuine interest to do these kind of things. They started to work on this mangrove restoration. So this is the point I was about to tell you. Because about 13 million USDs pumped to Sri Lanka after 2004. The main aim was to restore mangroves. But now you can see that I have done a countrywide appraisal to see that what is the real success of these projects. Actually, the projects which came into force after 2004. Now you can see that I could identify 67 different planting attempts, and there are 36 planting initiatives all around the country. Because of that countrywide appraisal, we could come up with these figures. But now you can see only 200 to 220 hectares could be restored out of 1,000 to 1,200. means that nearly 80% of the restoration attempts went wrong. Now, this is some of the statistics that show you that how many plantations and how many seedlings they use for their restoration projects. For instance, in all different things like dry, arid, intermediate, and wet zones. These are the 4 main zones that you can find in Sri Lanka. Now, so you can see very less number of seedlings survived at the end of the story, right? Then this is the most pathetic situation, and we could find 23 different kind of plantations. But you can see in green color where the success is greater than 50%. Here the success is measured by using how many seedlings they planted and how many seedlings are surviving by the time that we are doing our survey. Now you can see there are a lot of things in red color and brown color. The most of the sites were they are having 0 success and some are below 10. Then you can find that most of the restoration projects went really that they was not up to the expected standards. That only 3 sites which are on the western coast of Sri Lanka, they showed a good success. That I'll tell you the reason why we could get that kind of success. And these are some of the things that I need to show you, that this is after tsunami. This is one of the lagoons that you can find in the southern coast, Netolpitiya, Rakava, Madilla, Medagama. So all these are on the western southern coast, and you can see that number of seedlings planted, 70,500, pumping a lot of money, expending a lot of money. But acre planted 77, but you know that the surviving plant number was less than 1,000. Out of 70,500. Then you can really see what is the rate of failure of these kind of different things. And when you are looking at actually what went wrong with all these projects, the reason was that after tsunami, most of these restoration projects, they started without any kind of technical guidance. They did not look at what is the science behind all these processes and strategies. All they wanted to do is that they just want to plant something and they want to take some photographs and they are sending to the donors to get some money. So that was the main intention. Most of the people, they did not have any genuine interest rather than earning some money. So therefore, just for your knowledge, that we need to see the basic investigation of site selection and species selection, hydrology, and the technical aspects. At the same time, we want to see what kind of stresses and what kind of disturbances that we can find when we are going for this restoration and all. But all these things were not taken into account when they were in the process of restoring. So therefore, when it comes to Sri Lanka, so these are the common failures for all these projects. The first one is actually they could not find a very good place for restoration, because most of these restoration projects, they have launched even in mud flats. They did not have any idea about the hydrology. They did not have any idea about these tidal frequencies, especially in common in hydrology. And you can find at the same time, they did not focus on autoecology. Autoecology, probably you might have heard about this term. That means that the ecology of one species, that what are the favorable conditions that we need to give if you want to see that kind of a plant is getting established. So most of the things are really falling short of science. They did not look into all these kind of things. And apart from that, the lack of post-planting care. As I mentioned you before, they just planted and they took photographs and sent it to the donors. That's what they did. They did not look after the plants. They did not launch any kind of post-monitoring processes. So therefore, lack of post-planting care normally has been ranked as the topmost reasons for these kind of failures. And most of the projects are very short-term projects. Actually, they did not have much time to spend on this one. And more importantly, when it comes to species selection, and they did not follow any kind of technical guidance. This is one of the best example. They even use exocarya species. You might have seen, you might have heard about this exocarya species. In tsunami, what we saw was these exocarya were totally uprooted because of tsunami. But irrespective to that fact, they started to plant exocaria. So that was a very good indicator, which showed us that they are falling short of science, actually. And I mentioned this one before, they did not have any genuine interest to do mangrove restoration and all. And always, actually, then this is one of the best, that in Sri Lanka, the government now has a new policy. Means that they have really established a new governing body, which is called as National Task Force. Now, no one can restore mangrove without the permission of this Natural Task Force, right? That's a very good thing. So, as a very immediate solution, we have given a very short guideline for them to, if someone wants to do a very quick, sometimes that some of the projects are already approved. In that case, we couldn't, ask them to stop all these things. Therefore, we have given a very short guideline saying that if you want to really do these restoration projects, please try to use this one. Please take some of the experts from these respective fields. You can do some consultations to the environmental ministry. And we have given all these basic guidelines if someone wants to do, restoration things. But still, the government is still in the process of making very strong guidelines how people can do restoration and all. And at the same time, I'm very delighted to share with you that Sri Lanka is the only country which has enforced that even one plant of mangrove cannot be destroyed. So if you are caught red-handed, you will be badly prosecuted. So this Sri Lanka is the first country to do that kind of a thing. And actually, when it comes to this mangrove restoration project, since 2004, we are having very good collaborations with a lot of countries like Belgium, UK, USA, Kenya, France, and even with India as well. And this is how we can, normally we are processing in this one. And at the same time, actually, that we identified some of the gaps, research gaps that needs to be filled at our earliest possible, because in some cases that we need to have some sound knowledge for that one. Then we have already designed few research. Like this is one of the best example, because Rakava is normally situated on the southern coast of Sri Lanka, and this is normally called as one of the top pristine mangrove ecosystem that we had, right? But now they started to degrade, then because of the human activities and all that, we wanted to see that how we are going to restore. Because I guess that now there's a misconception that people straight away they want to do some plantations, and it is not at all recommended according to the technical guidelines. Because we all know that the first we need to see the hydrology, and we need to see that whether the seedlings are naturally recruiting or not. If things are not naturally going on, then we need to intervene and do the restoration things. So therefore, we are working on that as well. And these are relevant to some of the species. We want to see that what is their phenology and what is their growth and all that, how we can cope, how we can use them to cope up with these changing environmental conditions, that we are working on that as well. And we have given some of the guidelines for, as I mentioned before, that if someone wants to do restoration, that we need to give some, understanding on ecology of the different species, and how we want to get some knowledge on hydrology, and how we are going to assess the natural succession, and what kind of methodologies that you can use for that one. If the natural recruitment is taking place, sometimes the hydrology is not supporting that one. So in that case, that how we can restore this hydrology to facilitate these natural recruitments, we are into that process. And also we are just advising the people that if you want to really do some sort of projects, at least it needs to run for 3 to 4 years, because otherwise they just planted and going away, and there is no post care. Then there is no point of doing these restoration projects and all. And also we are going to force them to follow all technical guidelines, that set by different institutions, different ecological restoration institutions in the world. And from that point of view, we have recently started to work on blue carbon with the aim of getting some insight towards climate change mitigation, because in Sri Lanka we have some sort of data, but there's some gaps as well. So we started that one as well. And further to that one, this is another main causes for mangrove destruction in Sri Lanka. Converting all this land to shrimp farm because of the coastal economy. So now we are in the process of implementing a new policy that if someone wants to establish a shrimp farm, we need to do EIA, ecological impact assessment, and want to see that how it is going to happen, going to affect on mangroves. So with all this knowledge that the government is now in the process of giving permission for these things. Right, so these are the things I need to share with you, but I really like that if you have any kind of question or something to be discussed, I'm really happy to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sunanda, for the interesting presentation on mangrove restoration after tsunami in Sri Lanka. Knowing about the success and failure stories of these restoration projects is very important. We know that in this current scenario, as we know, so much of restoration projects are going on. And thank you for sharing where we have to improve our research and what solution we have for creating more success stories on mangrove restoration. So now we are open for the Q&A session. I kindly request the audience, if you have any questions, you can post it in the chat box.
I guess that they all were clear, right?
So,
okay.
So there is a question in the chat box.
Okay.
Tsunami seems to be an important trigger for high-level policies towards mangrove conservation and management in Sri Lanka. Please comment.
Yeah, actually, that as I told you before, that the mangrove, this tsunami has really induced us to, bring a lot of policies into Sri Lanka, because otherwise we would not work on this mangrove restoration and conservation and all. Yes, exactly, that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So there is another there is a followed question. What are the measures adopted to facilitate natural colonization where natural recruitment is hampered by some biological and environmental factors?
Yeah, because in Sri Lankan context, we have seen that there are a lot of development projects. Normally, that the government have given permission, for instance, that we could find a lot of hotel constructions, and sometimes that harbor dikes. Normally, they have already constructed, that barricading all these natural recruitment. So what we want to do is that we just want to give some recommendations for the coastal conservation department and wildlife, that how these kind of things can barricade natural recruitment. So now actually they have not taken any kind of step yet, but they are willing to get some solutions to remove all these kind of barriers. It is solely because of human driven activities.
Okay, thank you, sir. So there is one more question from Mayu Fulmali. How important is soil condition for mangrove restoration apart from hydrology? Can you suggest a way to biorestore the soil first to make it soil conductive for mangrove first, then follow up mangrove restoration?
Yeah, actually, I would say that if someone asks what are the two principal components that you need to take into account, because it's obvious that you cannot, experiment on all the different kind of soil properties. The best one is the soil bulk density and redox potential. Bulk density and redox potential. These are the two most important things that you can take into consideration if you go to the field to see that whether soil conditions are good or not. Of course, that you need to look at the other things as well, but these are the two principal components that you need to take into account. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There is no any further questions. You can stop sharing your screen, sir.
Okay, right. I do.
We'll move forward to the next speaker. So we have Dr. Aldri Amir from Malaysia. He will be talking about conserving and protecting mangrove for their powerful ecosystem services. So Dr. Aldri Amir is an associated professor at the Institute for Environment and Development, University of Kebangsaan, Malaysia. He is the coordinator of Malaysian Mangrove Research Alliance and Network and a commissioner member of IUCN SSC Mangrove Specialist Group. He obtained his PhD in marine science, mangrove ecology, from the University of Queensland, Australia in 2011. He has extensive experience in studying mangrove ecosystems in Malaysia and around the Indo-West Pacific region, specializing in mangrove habitat dynamics with major interest on mangrove socio-ecological system, including conservation, management, and governance of the signature ecosystem of the tropic. So I kindly request Dr. Aldri Amil for sharing his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Samna, for the nice introduction. And I would like to thank Dr. Nehru, of course, and the team at WII for hosting us. And I must thank all the speakers before me, Dr. Hamzah, Pak Hamzah in particular, for introducing to us or refreshing every one of us of the impact of tsunami happening 20 years ago. I just told Dr. Nehru yesterday, some of my students now at university, they are born after or around 2004. So meaning they don't have knowledge or experience or memory about the tsunami. So it is good for us to like recall this through this webinar. Thank you very much for having all of us here. And Dr. Nehru, of course, updated on the impact in Andaman and Nicobar, of course. And Dr. Sunanda, many of us were in Galle, Sri Lanka in 2012. So we saw the impacts even after like 8 years at that time. The train system was still affected even after 8 years of tsunami. So, and thank you, Sri Lanka, for imposing or enforcing that law. I think that's very remarkable, very exemplary. And yes, Sri Lanka and maybe some small countries like Cayman Island did come up with this law when no mangrove can be cut or disturbed. Yeah, so it is a very good example that all of us around the country, countries around this Indian Ocean region must actually emulate. Yeah, I would like to start this talk. I thought some of you would already shown this simulation, but I just want to share this model created by Delta Res. Our friends at Delta Res came up with this model showing the impact, yeah, on how a patch of mangrove forest, I mean, in this simulation, can attenuate wave. So imagine this is wave or maybe tides, like daily tides that mangrove have to face. Yeah. So imagine our discussion now is talking about 6 meters, 8 meters height of tsunami, yeah, tidal wave. So the discussion would be on how effective mangroves are, and at the same time we are discussing the impact that mangroves have to bear. So there are two ways or two perspectives to see our discussion today. Yeah? So I would like to take you to this animation or analogy that I would like to express to you. Pantai Aceh is located in east coast of Penang Island. Yeah? So this is one of the first spots to be hit for Malaysia, Langkawi and Penang. And this is the worst actually because it's facing the east and then facing Andaman Sea. But then I just want to show to you that mangroves, impact on mangrove can actually come not just from the ocean. Yeah, it can come from land. Yeah, it can come also from rivers. Yeah, so I mean, mangrove are located on the downstream of river system in many cases. Yeah, so disturbances can come from land, from rivers, yeah, upstream, as well as from the ocean that we're discussing today, as well as from the atmosphere. So when we are talking about climate change, for example, so we will expect more extreme weather events, yeah, and not only affecting atmospheric activities, but also oceanic activities. So disturbances can come from all angles. So this is the burden that mangroves have to bear. Yeah. So we've discussed just now, Pak Hamzah clearly explained like the impact of the tsunami itself, just one event, imagine, yeah. So imagine the intensity of the event. And the worst case is actually coming from the land. This is our disturbance towards mangrove. We built more houses, we built more ponds, yeah. We develop more agricultural area, but until when? This is the question, yeah. And of course, pollutant coming through rivers, yeah. I mean, we are putting a lot of rubbish, garbage, yeah, into our rivers, and not just that, the one that we cannot see, yeah, chemicals, yeah, going from factories, from agricultural land. So there you go. So our discussion today, so now 20 years after that tsunami, we are worried, of course, to receive next event of tsunami. But again, we have to bear in mind that there are daily disturbances that come attacking our mangrove forests. Yeah? And of course, we many of us ecologists here wonder, right? I mean, of the magic that mangroves are doing for over 70 million years, yeah, to 200 million years. They evolve to dominate themselves, yeah, to locate themselves, and to be special. So they can grow on land if they want, yeah. But then of course they prefer to be in the on the coastal belt, yeah, because they have special characteristics. Yeah, they can tolerate high amount of water. They can tolerate salt. Yeah, they don't need salt, but they can tolerate salt. So this is the ability that they are using, yeah, in the end for the benefit of us, for the benefit of nature, and of course us. So now the presentations earlier have clearly explained that mangroves are very significant in protecting, yeah, villages, yeah, protecting our area, but they themselves can be hurt, yeah, can be damaged with huge intensity, strong intensity of tsunami. Yeah? So if you all notice, yeah, mangrove can only be found here in the tropical belt, yeah, in between tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, yeah. So in equator. So many of us, yeah, were affected here, from the earthquake happening in Aceh just near, but the whole region were affected, yeah, the whole region, until Madagascar, yeah. So and then Malaysia is always known, yeah, to be like very special. We are out of the Pacific Ring of Fire, so we don't have volcano, we don't have earthquake. But in 2004, we realized, hey, even earthquake happening in Indonesia can actually have effect on us, yeah, in the form of tsunami. But then if you remember that belt, the green belt, yeah, that's tropical belt, if many of us know. But we must understand that within this belt also, we have to face a lot of challenges. So if you notice, there are typhoons, there are cyclones, there are hurricanes, yeah, tropical storms in general. So it is in the name, tropical storm. So it happens in the tropics. So this is the natural balance that nature has given us, God has given us, yeah. Mangroves on the tropics, and natural disasters like this in the tropics. So that's the balance that we are already been gifted, right? So if we tell this, yeah, to politicians, we tell this to the public, it should make sense, because this is mangroves are there in the tropics to keep to protect us, yeah, from these nature disasters. And of course, not just this, yeah. So my job today actually to provide like the services, yeah, to provide information and knowledge about the services that mangrove play. These are all magical. I take an example from India. Actually, this happens. I mean, the news that I received a couple of years ago, yeah, from in India, and I checked. It's actually last year, 2024, there were actually 12 major incidents, and I think 4 mega storm, I think, attacking India and Bangladesh. But then other events like suppression and stuff like that, yeah. So coastal area in India and Bangladesh in this particular case study is really extreme, yeah. But then if you notice, this is where we can find the largest contiguous mangrove piece, yeah, single mangrove piece in the world. Yeah, so yeah, there you go. You have this kind of pressure, but you also have this asset, yeah, to protect the whole communities of India and Bangladesh. Yeah? And this is very classical because this is at the end of at least 3 mega rivers, yeah, crossing across India and Bangladesh. So there you go. So this is very significant to be told to everyone, and you can tell how many communities have been protected during that day, yeah, on 26th of December 2024. But the point I want to highlight here also is to give extra information to all of you, where when you have like large piece of mangrove like that, like in the Sundarbans, it can provide home to large apex predator like the Royal Bengal tiger. So this is very important, yeah, because tigers require huge roaming area. Yeah? So by protecting Sundarbans mangrove, yeah, collaboratively in between India and Bangladesh, you are providing home for, of course, the tiger, and of course the food of the tiger, and then of course the food and the food of the tiger. So the whole tropic, yeah, chains, yeah, the food chains. So this is particularly important. So by having this mangrove, or by having this huge mangrove also, these biodiversity were being protected during that tsunami event. Yeah? And of course, in other countries, you can find other charismatic species, yeah, like this. We can go this in further maybe in a different topic. Yeah? And of course, this I would like to give this view to all of you. I love to share this analogy because it doesn't happen during daytime only, right? So, I mean, many of us see these. Yeah, for us scientists, we appreciate some of you may already detected several species just from this photo alone. But then some of you, maybe without scientific background, would feel the serenity, the calmness of this photo, right? But some people among us, maybe, they would feel like, hey, this is nothing you can get from this. We might as well develop this area to become a resort or a housing area. Stop doing that. Stop thinking about that and wait another half an hour to 1 hour when there's a sun down. Then you will realize actually it is also home for insects, beautiful insects like fireflies, right? So imagine a huge animal like tiger down to insects, down to microorganisms, which can only survive in mangrove forests. So if we clear mangrove, not just we're not protecting ourselves from tsunami and big oceanic events, but also these animals, yeah, these other organisms will be displaced and they cannot simply move. Yeah, like fireflies, there are a particular condition that they require. Proboscis monkey, for example, in Borneo, yeah, they live in mangrove forests. Maybe for mammals, big mammals like proboscis monkey, they can try to adapt it elsewhere, but not necessarily. Yeah? And of course, all of us know, I'm pretty sure all of us here agree to this already. A lot of knowledge, a lot of research about migratory birds, yeah, depending on wetlands, particularly coastal wetlands, yeah, in the tropics, yeah, as a stopover. So they love mangroves, they love mud flats as well. So there you go, that's a clue. So just now, Dr. Sunanda already highlight to you the do's and don'ts for restoration. That includes this, yeah. So we cannot simply plant mangrove in mudflats because these are preferred area also for migratory birds, yeah. And not just animals. You can see from this picture alone, this is not a huge patch as huge as Sundarbans. No, this is a small patch in one of the major rivers on west coast of Peninsular Malaysia. And you can see already the distinction, yeah, the distinct color of different zone and different species of mangrove plants. Yeah, mangroves plants are not as diverse as tropical forests. Yeah, and these 50 to 60 to 70 true mangrove species, yeah, can only survive, yeah, in this particular area. So that's why they are special. Yeah, we can count basically 50, 60, 70, but in tropical forests, thousands of plant species. Yeah, yeah. So that species wise, yeah. I mean, for plant in particular, they are not as diverse as tropical forests, but they have roles to play. Yeah, of course. You see, for example, in this case, yeah, I mean, this is a very classic. I mean, this seribuat always appear in classic manuscripts, Malay manuscripts. And I mean, it was known as archipelago before, Seribuat archipelago, Kepulauan Seribuat in Malay. But look at it now. So mangroves have that ability to connect, to build land, as we all learned from long time ago. So this is evidently discovered here. So we found that small islands, if you see the hills, they used to be like small islands. Now they become one island and connected by the mangroves. And of course, speaking of connectivity, mangroves always at the downstream. They are actually the end, the end of all the impacts that we have. So you see rivers, rivers carry water, carry natural nutrients, natural pollutants as well. They carry sediments, they carry rocks sometimes. So this is the optimum condition that we wish to see now. We used to be like that long time ago, but now we are putting extra load into the river. So you see, all this sediment, all this natural pollutant will be deposited into the mangrove, and clear water will be flushed into the ocean. So now there is an imbalance already. So the optimum condition of river equal the optimum amount of mangrove long time ago. But now the problem is the river is heavily polluted with a lot of other pollutants, and mangroves are shrinking. You see? So this is an imbalance already. Speaking of balance at the global scale just now this is the imbalance in the local scale that we have to tackle. Each of the country, each of us have to tackle this, because not just the mangrove, it will affect also seagrasses, coral reefs, oceanward, but also mangrove, seagrasses, and coral reef actually play together. They work together to actually protect land during that tsunami event. So if you notice in Dr. Hamza's presentation earlier, of course we focused at that time on mangrove only, but if you notice, areas with mangrove, seagrasses, and coral reef will be better protected also. Now, speaking of connectivity, this is the next subtopic that I think many of you are very interested in. Mangrove, on how it is, they are very efficient at storing carbon. Some of you did mention just now. So the ability of them to absorb carbon at very fast rate is already I mean, everyone is informed about that already. And not just absorbing at fast rate, but storing it in a very huge number for hundreds and thousands and millions of years already. So this is not only by the plants, it is actually the co-working in between all of that biodiversity that I've highlighted earlier. The crabs play important role by keeping the solid carbon from leaves before turning into organic matter, because it cannot happen in mangrove because of the tides. So it is being stored straight away into the soil by all of these other organisms. And of course, these are the lists that I managed to come up with at this moment. But of course, there are longer lists for each of that component of ecosystem services. So what I did mention just now was just one line here. And then of course it is home, provisioning for habitat, and there are other services that they play. So it is very important. So so there you go. So this is my presentation today is to actually extend from all of our knowledge about the impacts of a tsunami on mangrove, but how by affecting mangrove it actually affects the rest of other connected ecosystems along our coastlines. Okay, so let's take a look at our past a little bit. So I did mention about Sundarbans just now. It is actually the mouth of Brahmaputra and Ganges. I think that there's another river. I think big river, major river. Okay, so there you go. So this actually relates to how all of us actually started stop being nomad, start our civilizations by depending on the protection given by mangrove. So if you notice again from that map just now, the green belts. So many tropical civilizations actually started off in major river deltas. So what do you have in major river deltas in the tropics? You have mangroves. So it's not just about dependency on water and water transportation. It is actually the resources, because humans, we need to eat. We need to get protection, right? So this is part of the reason. So mangrove actually play a very important role in the start, in the beginning of our civilizations in many throughout the tropics. Yeah. But then, so this is the second part where I just want to open up your minds about the impacts, that we are putting. It is not just the one-off event of tsunami, but of course that event opened up a lot of our eyes, and of course taking us to pay extra attention. So if you notice, I bet the same will happen in your country as well. So you will find major cities, except for landlocked country like Laos, you don't have coastline, but still, like I told you earlier, Mekong River, for example, it ends in Vietnam, but you see, it crosses 5 different countries. So, country like Laos, also, even if it's landlocked, it can actually contribute, positively or negatively towards mangroves in the downstream. So you look at this in a map of Malaysia, you will find major cities. They used to be like small village, turning into a town, turning into city, and some have become major cities. It's the same in Borneo also, Malaysia part of Borneo. You will see big towns, big cities growing at the on the coast. So these are mangrove dominated towns and cities. So this is Balik Pulau, the one I mentioned earlier. So from different angle, the one that the first faced by tsunami on 26 December 24. So I remember I was speaking with 4 very old lady. They live in 4 different wooden houses behind mangroves, in Penang, in Balik Pulau. They didn't notice. Imagine. So because they were protected by a large, huge belt of mangrove, they didn't notice there was tsunami that day. But on the other side of Penang Island in Gurney Drive, the whole area and Feringhi and the northern side of Penang were affected. The hotels, the businesses, cars, were destroyed. But these 4 ladies that I spoke to, they didn't notice there was tsunami on that day. So imagine, but this huge piece of mangrove, the belt here covering east coast of Penang, would already be beneficial to
Sir, I'm
thousands
sorry
of
to interrupt.
communities.
The
Yeah.
time is up.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry. Okay, I
I
didn't
kindly
notice that.
request to conclude.
All right. So there you go. So I will just go quickly in 1 minute. So this is where it is very important for us to notice this, to realize this. So to minimize the impacts of mangrove, and then of course not just for a tsunami is one major event that we are trying to protect ourselves from, but of course the rest of ecosystem services, provided by mangrove, and of course the impact doesn't stop here in the mangrove. It actually affects all wildlife in the marine environment. Of course, this section I will explain later during the summary. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing more interesting thoughts on topic conserving and protecting mangroves for their powerful ecosystem services. So if there is any questions, we can discuss. So there is one question, we can go for that. It is from Mayur Fulmani. He's asking that if in future a tsunami happens, what key research areas would you suggest that should be prioritized now?
Oh, very good question. Thank you very much. So the most important thing, I think this will be discussed, especially in the next session, with Dr. Frida as the moderator. So one key thing that I would like to suggest for all countries, taking Sri Lanka as a very good example. So what we need now, all countries need, is to identify areas, intact mangrove forest. That's one mapping activity that must be done for all countries. And then, of course, overlaying it with to understand the status of that particular intact mangroves. And the more important thing is what kind of research you ask, is to identify restorable areas. Okay, so first we have, a mapping exercise must be done by all countries within the tropics to understand where the intact mangrove lies and where and what are the status of these mangroves. In some countries, mangrove are protected with different system or mechanisms, right? So get to know the system being used in your country, and then identify it and establish it to be accepted by not just federal authority but local authorities. So they must know, okay, these are the mangrove we have, and these are the affected or damaged area or mangrove loss that is happening in your country, in your state, in your district. And this is where we must prioritize restoration, and we must identify what measures to be taken. Like Dr. Sunanda mentioned earlier, planting is not the only solution. You cannot simply plant everywhere, right? Do not plant on mudflat, do not plant on seagrass, do not plant on coral reef. Identify, not just mapping restorable area. This is a very important research to be done. You need scientists, ecologists, you need geographers, you need mapping experts. So identify this restorable area and then speak to Dr. Hamzah, for example, and other coastal engineers, hydrodynamic experts on what measures to be taken. So if you have to invest on offshore wave breaker, by all means, we have to do that because we want to fix or rectify the hydrology of that coast. Erosion is very bad, so you cannot simply plant mangrove there. You need some other interventions. Okay, so this is the research that needs to be done, not just for Malaysia, not just for Indonesia, not just for, even for a country like Singapore, but all the countries all throughout the tropics. So that is the primary research that I'm proposing in this meeting today for all countries to invest on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So, by this, we are concluding our technical session. I once again thank every speakers for sharing your insights from your represented countries on different angles. So now we will move on to our next session, that is the panel discussion. It will be moderated by Dr. Frida Siddiq. She's a principal researcher at the Research Center of Oceanography, National Research and Innovation Agency, Indonesia. Her study focuses on mangrove ecology, blue carbon, coastal restoration, and climate change. She had BSc from the University of Sydney, Australia, and MSc from the University of Warwick, United Kingdom. She has been involved in many science policy interaction and programs such as USAID and Science and Technology Fellowships and USAID Pure Science and Global Ocean Decade Program for Blue Carbon, International Partnership for Blue Carbon, Global Mangrove Alliance, and IUCN Mangrove Specialist for Southeast Asia region. She's the editor of Dynamic Sedimentary Environments of Mangrove Coast and has published many scientific articles, particularly with the topic of mangrove ecosystem. And along with her, we have our panel speakers, Dr. Verni Budi Arifandi and Dr. Benjamin M. Brown. So Dr. Virni Budi Arifandi is a principal researcher at the Research Center for Ecology and Ethnobiology, National Research and Innovation Agency, Republic of Indonesia. Virni specializes in tropical mangrove ecosystem, wetland ecology, blue carbon, greenhouse gas inventory, and climate change studies. She has a keen interest in carbon dynamics and nature-based solution of wetland ecosystem. Most of her work focuses on mangrove carbon cycle and greenhouse gas inventory, particularly focusing on their role in carbon sequestration, land use change, and conservation in Indonesia. She has contributed significantly to the understanding of how mangroves act as important carbon sinks and the environmental impact of converting these ecosystems into aquaculture and other land uses. And Dr. Benjamin M. Brown is a joint postdoctoral researcher, Charles Darwin University and Australian Institute of Marine Sciences. He, in 2000, Dr. Benjamin founded the grassroots organization in Yogyakarta, which later became the forerunner to the Blue Forest establishment. Dr. Benjamin is a co-author for several peer-reviewed papers, a peer-reviewed mangrove rehabilitation manual and recent UNEP guidelines for coastal carbon project. He is also a current member of IUCN Mangrove Specialist Group and a PhD candidate at Charles Darwin University Research Institute of Environment Livelihoods. So I kindly call upon Dr. Frida Siddiq for moderating this panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sana, for the introduction. So today we have learned many things from the previous speakers, how this region coped with this catastrophe. So it's very interesting to discuss now. What do we see any significant change in mangrove cover, people perspective, and policy, and also science. So today we have two panelists, Dr. Benjamin Benbrow and Dr. Fini Advantipuji. So without further ado, I would like to start the panel with Dr. Ben, insight on mangrove recovery after tsunami in Indonesia. Please, Ben, you can share the slide now.
Okay, thanks. I will share a few slides and then be ready for discussion questions as well. But let me share my screen. And make it big. Okay. Everything good there? Everyone can see?
Good.
Okay. So thanks. I think that was an older bio of mine that was shared. So I'm now a postdoctoral researcher at Charles Darwin University and the Australian Institute for Marine Science, and I still play a role with Blue Forests, and I'm also the lead mangrove expert on the World Bank government of Indonesia's current mangrove restoration and conservation project. So this was back, yeah, it's been a long time since the terrible tsunami. And the Nias earthquake as well in that region. I was living in Indonesia at the time and didn't go to Aceh right away in Indonesia because there was such a humanitarian need, I thought. And we were small and busy in another part of Sumatra, in Riau. But eventually did go to Aceh quite a bit after people had planted mangroves, much like Kodikara had reported, lots of 100+ organizations planting mangroves with very little experience and background. So we were asked by the Australian Red Cross to find out why their mangrove planting was not working. And so we got a chance. Whoops, sorry. We got a chance to start to engage in Aceh. And so here on the left, I show a quick map just to review. This was also, I think it's Professor Nehru, yeah? Prabakaran, yeah? Prabakaran shared about uplift and subsidence. And we observed similar in Indonesia. Here is a map by Dr. Kerry Sie, who I saw Dr. Nehru also cite in his presentation. Kerry is from the California Institute of Technology, I think, and I met him in Aceh during his research and got to share data and look at some of his measurements. He was cutting coral reefs with a chainsaw to look at how many subsidence events have happened over geological history, yeah, last 100 and 1,000 of years. It's very interesting. Anyway, this map shows the bottom left is interesting. It shows the cumulative effects of uplift and subsidence after the tsunami and the Nias earthquake. And we see that the Simeulue Island in the bottom left here came up on average 25 to 50 centimeters in the middle of the island and up to a meter or more than a meter on the east and west of the island, yeah? And another place I'll look at is on the mainland of Sumatra called Singkil Lagoon, which subsided. And in the figure on the right, we can see when Simeulue Island came up, the mangroves in Teluk Dalam in the middle, they didn't come up so much, only 25 centimeters. So they started recovering, and between 2006, I have other pictures of this, there was natural recovery. But on the far east and far west of the island, which either lifted up or which mostly lifted up, yeah, cumulatively, recovery was slow. A lot of the mother trees had died, and the tidal creeks were disconnected from the ocean, and recovery took a long time. So here we look in Teluk Dalam in the middle of the island. in 2006, so several years after the event, mangroves started to just geser, move towards the sea on the newly uplifted accommodation space. And in 5 years, they had grown back pretty well, many species, and I'll talk about that in a second. In Sinquil Lagoon was a subsidence case, yeah? And so in Sinquil, mangroves were forced to move inland, not out towards sea or toward the lagoon, right? And we saw there the replacement before the uplift and before the subsidence, in this landscape. Rhizophora apiculata was the most seaward site near the edge of the lagoon. Then Bruguiera gymnorrhiza and Nipa together in like an association. Then Soneratia cassiolaris, and onward, toward the land where we had eventually Acrosticum and Acanthus. And then after the subsidence event, everything just shifted maybe one zone inland, and Acanthus and Acrosticum had no more room because they had run into a sand dune at that point. But everything just effectively shifted inland. And I have some data, but I'm not going to take our time to share. So while that was while uplift and subsidence had taken place, people didn't measure it and didn't understand it yet. So this picture shows on Simulu Island the Red Cross's attempt at planting mangroves, and these are we call them ajir, just bamboo stakes next to the seedling that they were supposed to plant, and all the seedlings had died in areas where the uplift, you can see on the left, was this was an uplift area, and they couldn't figure out what zone. It turns out that zone is appropriate for Acrosticum maybe, and not for some of the woody mangroves. And then out to sea, also lots of dead planted mangroves in the wrong zone, and also transport of seedlings was very caused mortality. But we see natural seedlings growing here out in the planting area. Rhizophora grew there, Bruguiera, Nipa, and Soneratia cassiolaris. So 4 species were pioneering, but the things that were planted were not surviving. Yeah, it's interesting. Our reaction to help the Red Cross and communities in 10 villages in Simulu Island and 10 villages in Sinquil Lagoon was to do some hydrological repair, reconnect tidal creeks with the coast, and even going through some like sandbars or things that were serving as a barrier, and gathering lots of propagules and distributing them, especially in the west and the east side of the island, because the middle, Teluk Dalam, was okay and growing back, but the west and east side was very slow. And I just have some pictures of how slow recovery was on the east and west side. This is a Lingi village near Amaiteng, the capital of Simulu Island. And here we see in 2005 the uplifted intertidal area quite clearly, and it's unvegetated all the way to 2015. Keep your eye on where this little dermaga, what's a dermaga? This jetty is, yeah? And then still uplifted and mostly unvegetated in 2017. But 2020 finally, so how many years? 15 plus years after the tsunami, we start to see these mangroves come back. It's just, they were propagule limited, yeah? And then 2022, we see there's pretty good recovery. But this natural recovery we see can take a long time, 15 to 20 plus years. And our activities to speed it up with this human-assisted propagule dispersal is some recommended activity, yeah, after such an event. Also reconnecting this tidal area. Maybe one day we'll go back and take some monitoring data and have a paper to publish on this. But that's all I want to share before the questions. And I guess my big point, I will make one point before the questions, Frida, is just that one thing that seemed key to the recovery of several things probably, the degree of uplift or subsidence, of course, and where it's small and only 25 or 50 centimeters, that's still in the intertidal zone. The intertidal zone is very small also in Simulu Island, only 78 centimeter total range, not even a meter of tidal range. but it was within the intertidal and easier to recolonize with mangroves. And where things were uplifted 1.5 meters, which is double the tidal range, recovery has been very slow. Another key, the final key, is biodiversity. Simeulue Island and Sinkil had 25 or more species of true mangroves and many mangrove associates. And there's functional redundancy. Mangroves that grow near mean sea level and in the middle of the mangrove and in toward the land in the upper mangrove, there's many species of each. And so that redundancy is due to biodiversity, and we call it functional redundancy because they play similar functional roles even though they're different species, right? And that seems to have a very good impact on recovery because you never know what the conditions are going to be at your restoration site exactly, how much they've subsided or eroded and what the sediments are. So if you can have that high diversity and high functional redundancy, then you've built what we call adaptive capacity, which is similar to resilience. And the adaptive capacity in these systems, Syukur was very high. And so they're recovering, even though the west and the east have recovered slowly, and the central part, Teluk Dalam, recovered very quickly, actually, and with a full complement of mangrove species. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. It's very interesting insight from you, and then how you can show how the uplift, the tsunami can also bring like the positive, for generations, for in some area. So it's like interesting for me to know about. Do you think that what is the most talk about resilience? Do you think that the resilience and biodiversity has like something like connecting us, relationship, something like that in mind?
Yeah, that's the clear point that resilience is part, like ecological resilience is in some point dependent on diversity, right? Diversity of species. I saw Kodikara also using the terms autoecology and synecology. So the diversity of species, individual species, and the diversity of community associations. Where they're high, you can recover from change or stress, bounce back from stress. And this event was, of course, a major stressor, right? And I would extend that a little bit to the social systems. So we talk about landscapes as social ecological systems, and we talk about resilience of social ecological systems. So the functional redundancy in terms of ecology is beneficial. In a social kind of system or a governance system, maybe people thought it was not beneficial. There's Indonesia says tumpang tindih, like redundance of roles, right? And so that's sometimes seen as a negative. But where one or more institutions care about mangroves, maybe not just the forest department, but also marine affairs and the governor and the president and all these different agencies, and local government, then they can all maybe take care of the mangroves. Whereas if only one institution is tasked with mangrove management, that's a lot to do. And so there's no low functional redundancy. Same with the community. If everyone has just built their livelihood on one thing like timber or one kind of fish, the resilience of that community economically is going to be low. But where people play different functional roles for their livelihoods and stuff, you have a more resilient community in case there's disturbances or shocks or stresses. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. So talk about the social system and then how about the mangrove governance. I would like to have a highlight on policy and people. So I would like to ask Dr. Firni that have many experience dealing with the government and management. Maybe you can talk about is there any policy response or is there any policy introduced after the tsunami in Indonesia or maybe in the region after the tsunami?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Frida. Can you hear my voice? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So after the tsunami, there is quite a change in the government regarding how they look to this ecosystem, because I think beforehand the government doesn't take a good care of this mangrove ecosystem, because most of this mangrove ecosystem have been converted to other land uses. But then after the tsunami, then many people realized the importance of this mangrove ecosystem. And then the government has also then put efforts to rehabilitate this degraded and destroyed ecosystem by establishing what we call the Agency for Rehabilitation and Reconstruction. It was specifically established for the reconstruction programs in Aceh and Nias. And it got also international support to do the rehabilitation programs in Indonesia. And on the national level, of course, the government of Indonesia has integrated this mangrove rehabilitation into the ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, or the ECO-DRR policy. So there are laws and regulations that have been decreed by the government since 2005 onwards. For example, we have law number 24 in 2007 on disaster management, where it mandated the integration of environmental management, including the mangrove rehabilitation, as one of the disaster preparedness and mitigation strategies. And then the government of Indonesia has also established the National Mangrove Strategy, which included rehabilitating the degraded mangrove areas and policies for the sustainable use of mangrove resources. So there are, after this tsunami, there are several legal frameworks on mangrove management. And currently, the government of Indonesia is still preparing the regulation on mangrove protection. That has this law is still being it will be signed by the president, but it has not been signed yet. So we are really looking forward for this new regulation on mangrove protection, and I think this regulation will become a new umbrella for mangrove management policy in Indonesia. Yeah, I think that's all from me, Dr. Frida.
Thank you. I think we all agree that after tsunami, we have better mangrove governance, especially in this region. So I would like to get some your suggestion, Ben, Dr. Finn, and Dr. Benjamin. What is your suggestion or solution, something that might have to be improved for mangrove management in the future? And also speaking about the restorations, is there any challenge to enhance the coastal resilience, especially in this case of tsunami or any coastal disaster? Maybe Ben first. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I think my recommendations will align with I think things are happening to that, like we can hear from Virni, and then I will say what I think good is happening, and then we just have a little bit farther to go, but we've already come a long way since the tsunami. And I would just say that for maybe decades, in Indonesia, in 1980s, even 90s, early 2000s, etc., the mangrove management approach was very simplistic. There were some protected mangroves in national protected areas, and those were mostly just on paper protection. And there was planting of one species or one genera, Rhizophora, annual planting in many coastal districts, but without really much nuance, right? Without assessment of viable sites, without enough long-term work. I think one of the presenters recommended earlier at least 4 years, right, of engagement in a mangrove restoration effort, and the government kept doing it year after year, but not learning lessons, no adaptive management, just doing the same thing over and over. But I think that's changed. In Indonesia, I'm sure that's changed, the restoration policy and practice. So the policy is good now, regulations and allowing ecological restoration now and hydrological restoration. We didn't used to have those regulations until 2 years ago. We have cost codes to operationalize that. That's good. So now going forward, it'll be the practice, right? Like the policy and the framework is there. Now just people need experience undertaking ecological restoration and integrated assessment of restoration sites and paying attention to community engagement, you know, and social economic development along with mangrove restoration first, yeah. And then mangrove protection now is also happening in a better way, not just in national parks, for instance, but everywhere. The new Indonesian regulation will be in the forest estate, 2 point something million hectares, and outside the forest estate, in district lands we call them, or we call them alternate use lands in Indonesia. But when they have mangrove ecosystems on them, they will have a degree of protection they didn't have before. And I think the final thing that still that's still a gap until the system is really resilient is this sort of financial and economic piece. Mangroves still aren't appreciated for their direct use yet. And the direct use value of mangroves is low. And that encourages conversion to simpler business like propositions like aquaculture or oil palm or something like that. So really highlighting and developing the sustainable uses of mangroves still needs to come along. And then finally, the economic value of mangroves we know is high. And some of that is reflected in like carbon prices and things, but that has not been put into practice well enough yet, right? The policy and the understanding of blue carbon is global, but in practice, we still have very little blue carbon progress in our country, in Indonesia, and in the region. So you need to increase the financial and the economic value of mangroves to stop investors from developing those kinds of areas with community or without community, however it goes, right? So I think we've come a long way, but there's still some things to do. Thank you.
Thank you. So how about the Fernie? Do you have any recommendations, suggestions for the future mangrove?
Yeah, I think Ben has covered almost all aspects. Yeah, I would like to highlight the rehabilitation or restoration techniques that needs to be improved. Yeah, we have seen that in time the government has listened to the scientists, mangrove scientists like you, Ben, and yeah, we have make inputs, yeah, feedback to the government. What kind of practice that needs to be conducted. And then, yeah, and I think the needs to mitigate the economic pressure from this coastal community, that what Ben had said, that we need to shift the mind of these people that previously they are very dependent on this direct benefit from the mangrove ecosystem, but then we need to increase the awareness of this local community, how to sustain the mangrove ecosystem for their future generations. And of course, we need to increase then the economic value of the mangrove resources for the local communities, and then by increasing the education, yeah, of the people surrounding the mangrove ecosystem. And also, there's one thing that needs to be resolved until now is the conflicting land use policies that is still happening in Indonesia right now, because in order to rehabilitate, we need a clean and clear land use status. And I think this is still the task of the government, yeah, to have this a clean and clear land tenure for the rehabilitated areas in the future. Yeah, that's it for me, Dr. Pida. Thank you. Dr. Pida, I cannot hear your voice.
Yeah, I think that's sorry. Yeah, I think that's one of the important things that we haven't highlighted yet, but the lengthener, yeah, for the restorations. And yeah, and speaking about the science, as you know, we both are science. So what is the most important aspect that we need to have to adopt the science-based solution, not only for like for tsunami, but also for mangrove management and restoration? What do you think, Sophie?
Yeah, in terms of science, I think science play a pivotal role, yeah, in this matter, because we need to increase the public awareness on the importance of mangrove ecosystems, and we have to increase the awareness of the evidence of the mangrove ecosystem benefits, what kind of benefits, ecological benefits that can be generated from this ecosystem, like, for example, what we have seen, the disaster risk reduction that can be attained from this mangrove ecosystems for the tsunami, and also in terms of climate change mitigation and also the economic value. And also, I think we need to bridge the knowledge gaps, yeah, that has been lacking so far, yeah, in terms of the ecosystem linkages. So what are the interconnectedness of mangroves with other ecosystems, for example, the coral reefs and then the seagrass, because now we are speaking about blue carbon, yeah, so mangrove is one of the mangrove blue carbon ecosystem that has interconnection with other ecosystem that needs to be protected. And then the research and science also needs to have an influence on the policy and governments, yeah, and governments on how the government can sustainably manage the mangrove ecosystem in the future. And for that, we need evidence-based policy, and also this policy must have recognized by the international community. Because if we have like a policy that only recognized at the national level, but not at the international level, I think that would be that is not desirable. So we need like an international recognition of the mangrove management policies, which is based on evidence-based and science policy. Yeah, and also we need to engage local communities in our research and studies on mangrove ecosystem.
I agree with that. Yeah. So one last question, I think for Ben, I got from the floor. Maybe you can explain that we have already seen some example how the mangrove recover. So do you think it's similar what happened to your side as well?
Yeah, good. I'll start from that question, and I'll add one more thing, I think, that Virni and made me reminded me of. Well, I'm very interested. Like Dr. Is it Nehru, right? Am I saying the right name?
Yeah, Nehru.
Nehru, yeah. So that the photos from Andaman and Nicobar just seemed so familiar to me, like because it's just what we witnessed in Aceh, yeah. Plus, I've been to Malaysia after the tsunami and Sri Lanka as well, and saw some similar patterns there. I think recovery time periods need to be understood a little bit. I think that's a need, yeah. Some things bounce back really fast, and some things take longer. We had a mass die-off of mangroves here in Northern Australia. In what year was that? 2015, 2016, in the bad El Niños. And only 33% of that area in the Gulf of Carpinteria has recovered, and 66% is unvegetated, not small mangroves, just nothing. Even though there's a lot of pohon induk, mother trees, yeah, sources of propagules. But the area has not resettled after that disaster. the sediment was displaced through some cyclones and things and moves around. And so nature needs some more recovery time in that situation. And then humans need to understand that before they try to do something, right? Sometimes they'll act too quick and plant, oh, this is the best species, they say, Rhizophora, because of it. But nature is still changing. The substrate height is changing, accommodation space location is changing. It's not stable. So we need to know when things are not stable. We need to know, can we stabilize them a little bit? Can humans play a role? In our project in Aceh, all we needed to do was release propagules, right? But the island is settling back by itself because the subsidence and uplift is a cycle in that Sunda megathrust. It happens every 100 or 200 years, and this has happened before, and the mangroves come back. But sometimes they don't come back quick enough for political cycles, right? Or for management cycles. Sometimes it takes decades and not years, and sometimes takes centuries and not decades. Yeah. And then one more point I make before I'm done for the day, I think, just Virni reminded me when she talked about connectivity with other ecosystems, and then Georgine Primavera is supposed to be here in our session. And I know her work on Mangrove Associates has been so amazing in the Philippines. And we are just starting to, I think that's a future direction where we are looking landward of the mangroves and what is there and what should be there. A lot of times it's developed or overdeveloped or becomes a plantation with low adaptive capacity. And so we're looking at how we can promote mangrove associate species and other hinterland species like lowland swamp forest kind of species, peat swamp forest species, to enhance that connectivity between mangroves and the land, the hydrological connectivity, biogeochemical flows, all those things scientists know are important, right? But we're running into problems a little with communities who have, like in Riau, we have vast areas converted. The mangroves were cut, and the area behind the mangroves on the land were turned into coconut plantation. Sea level rises, and now there's no mangroves, so nothing to buffer the salt water coming in, and we have a lot of die-off of coconut palm all of a sudden. In one landscape I work in, thousands of hectares of coconut died in the last 2 years, which is the community's livelihood, right? And now understanding the way forward is complex. They want their coconuts and they want some of their mangroves, but they don't want the complex species and connectivity that used to exist there. But that's what protected them in the past, because sediment could flow, water could flow, fresh water came down and buffered salt water, right? So we have to figure out ways to make those abstract scientific concepts more real. So like and you do that through analogy. So we have to develop analogies and real good practical, also landscape demonstrations of good management, so people can see the value of natural systems, right? Things like that. I think I'll close on that. Sorry for talking too much. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I can take some questions from the audience. Perhaps somebody who wants to ask to the speaker panelists. Okay. All right. So there is one more questions, interesting questions. I think it's related to what we just discussed it, as we believe that natural regeneration is a better way, yeah, for this kind of rehabilitation. So should we wait till the natural colonization take over the site, or maybe can we make like intervention to quickly establish the mangrove in the new accommodation space? So maybe Dr. Finney and Ben can give answer to these questions.
I'll let Firni speak last. I'll give a real short one. We call it human-assisted natural regeneration, or human-assisted in mangroves. We call the way we do it is we call it human-assisted propagule dispersal, helping the forest disperse their propagules, yeah, periodically. And now that has become an actual method, and there's a cost code, and it will be practiced in Indonesia. So that's very interesting. It's a passive type of restoration, right? Where you don't need to raise seedlings in nurseries. So we're happy for that. And sometimes you need to combine that with hydrological repair if there's some kind of modification in the landscape that's stopping secondary succession, natural secondary succession. We need to overcome that, and then we can help disperse propagules. So speeding up nature's recovery a little is possible, and I think in Sri Lanka, we have good evidence of this too in the uplands, right? The forest gardens and what do they call that kind of ecological restoration? Forest gardens, I think they call it analog forestry in Sri Lanka. It has a good history of that in the uplands, and we should do that also in the mangrove area.
Yeah, I think it depends on the destruction or the degradation that has been occurred in the site. If, for example, like a tsunami affected areas where the areas has been completely gone, for example, the mangroves are gone completely, then I think we need to have this human assisted regeneration, like what Ben have said, yeah. But if the degradation is not severe, like in tsunami affected areas, I think we can still rely on the natural regeneration. And yeah, because we know that the results of natural regenerations are always better than the planted one. Yeah. So I think we need to. It depends on the situation. Yeah. When we can use the natural regeneration and when we can apply this planting. Human assisted regeneration. Yeah. I think that's a brief answer for me.
Thank you. So I think we got like the very interesting discussion, and then we learn many things from the speakers and the panelists and recommendations. So thank you, Dr. Benjamin and Dr. Firni, for your time. So I will give the floor to Shanma. Thank you.
So that was a wonderful session. A very big thank you to all the panel members for sharing your perspective and diving into such an engaging conversation. And it is clear that while significant progress has been made in understanding mangrove resilience, there are still critical gaps that need to be addressed with further research and collaboration. So now, as we approach the conclusion of this webinar, we now move to the final session, that is the concluding remarks and webinar insight. For that, I would like to invite Dr. Aldri Amir, who will help us to tie together the insight we have acquired today. So,
thank you very much again, Shamna. And of course, thank you for all the insights coming from the discussion earlier. A lot of knowledge there, I reckon. And it could be useful for all of us, yeah? So to end this session, I will give like a very quick 10 minutes insights and summary from our discussion today before Dr. Nehru end this session, yeah? So we all know already, yeah, how impactful mangroves are, how important mangroves are, and Dr. Ben just now highlighted how dynamic they are, meaning mangrove, like I mentioned earlier, they are known before as land builders, but they can also retreat, right? They can also become smaller and smaller, right? Impacted by erosion, for example. And like Dr. Ben's highlighted just now, it can subside. And of course, in some cases, they can elevate also. So there you go. We have to understand the situation at local mangrove area. What is the condition there in your area? So how do we address issues like restoration, if you want, yeah, or protection in that case, yeah? So I guess the most important thing, the first thing that all of us have to do now is identify whatever we have left and protect them. Yeah, it is extremely important to do this at national scale or district or state scale, depending on the system of government or your country system. And then we can also, by protecting it with law, a national law or federal law at your country, we can also double and triple protect it by listing them with international programs, like UNESCO Man and Biosphere Reserve, for example, World Heritage Site, if you feel like it is directly linked to their aims and missions. Yeah? And of course, Ramsar. I mean, many mangrove areas in the whole in the whole world are listed as Ramsar sites. So double, triple protected that way. Yeah? And of course, these are the low-hanging fruit that we see all across Southeast Asia in particular, right? I mean, in this case, yeah, I mean, there was no intention of that particular operator before. I mean, they left this area abandoned, but then they didn't notice actually by breaking a little bit of the wall, natural tidal process actually carry seedlings from that seed banks next to it, and some of the compartment. Yeah, some of the compartments are being recolonized by mangrove naturally. No planting, no whatsoever. Yeah, no human assisted in this case. Yeah, so there you go. Imagine if we put in some effort to um, repair the elevation or the hydrology, it will go smoothly. But yeah, this depends on your understanding, our understanding. And look at this picture, right? What are we trying to do here? So we have to ask questions like that. We don't want to turn this beach area. This is a very famous beach, by the way. Even in the 1960s, 1970s movies, we saw people, playing on this beach. Yeah, but suddenly, what are we trying to do here? Right? We don't want to turn this into a Matang mangrove or Sundarbans mangrove, right? So it is not suitable. Yeah. They may, we never know, 1,000 years from now, naturally, it is suitable for mangrove. Maybe it will happen naturally, but don't force it. Yeah. So ask questions like this. I think this is a good summary. I mean, from the many, guidelines, modules that we've learned from a lot of our friends from across the globe. Yeah. So ask question like this. Yeah. Why, what, how, where, when, whom. Yeah. To be involved. Yeah. To be done. Yeah? In a disturbed mangrove area. Prioritize disturbed mangrove areas. So there you go. Identification of intact mangrove is one. Identification of restorable area is another one. So there are hundreds, I would say, hundreds of research and reports and guidelines and manuals all across in the past 10 to 20 years. Yeah, many of our friends have published a lot of based on scientific evidence. And one summary that I would like to share here is the one coming up from around 100 plus researchers combined and studying past modules and guidelines. You can scan this QR code to download it for free. Yeah? It is actually translated into Bahasa Indonesia and other languages as well for your convenience. Yeah. And like Ben highlighted earlier, yes, community-based ecological mangrove restoration, that they have been taking it to the center for a long, long time. I mean, Mangrove Action Project, there's a lot of other NGOs all across Indonesia and across the tropical region. Yeah, you see, I mean, this is an example that I would like to share. This area was illegally encroached by an operator to turn it into aquaculture pond. And the communities actually got together, chased away the operators, and came together like, hey, come, we have to repair. Yeah, we have to fix this mangrove. And I think they did simply plant. But then you see, with low technology, with low engineering, it became a mangrove again. Of course, little effort they have, and you can still see the remnants of the ponds. And of course, in many extreme cases, this is the one in Tanjung Piai, the southernmost tip of Asia continent, Eurasia continent, if you like, heavily eroded. This is in the south of Straits of Malacca, where the meeting point of three countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, it is here. And you can imagine shipping activity, millions of ships passing through this area. And of course, erosion was very, very, very bad. Yeah. And this is like the photo Ben again, the dermaga, the pier. It was actually no mangrove anymore. Like in 2004, it was gone, totally gone because of the erosion. And they tried a lot of measures, planting. Oh my goodness, they planted a lot of mangrove, wasted a lot of energy and money there. But then nothing actually worked at that time, right? And then they put on geotube. So this fabric actually broken after 5 years, and the sand within that geotube actually killed mangrove further back, right? In the end, they decided, okay, wave breaker, I mean, offshore wave breaker. And after like 4-5 years, we see the sedimentation is becoming solid, and nature recruitment is happening there. So this is an example where maybe engineering solution could help. So not wave breaker like really near shore, like on the edge, but offshore wave breaker actually help in this case. And of course, other efforts you can see from this paper cutting alone, from I think, right after tsunami. In fact, some before tsunami, actually there were effort already to restore, by many stakeholders, and of course, technology is coming in, AI technology, drone technology to plant. But then again, go back to basic, right? I mean, what does it need? Precision planting, yes, but is to understand the area is more important. The scientific need, the characteristic of that particular area would help in these technology being employed or deployed. And as you all mentioned just now, the Virni ban and the rest, I mean, this political will is another issue, not only for one or two countries, but all, I reckon, So good efforts like Sri Lanka, just now we heard, can be emulated. So maybe all of us scientists have to like collaborate with communities and maybe good speakers, good influencers, if you like, to speak different different languages to these politicians and policymakers. I take one quick example for Malaysia. You see, I've made this review of past all the related laws that we have. I mean, at federal and state or regional laws within the country. There are actually many already mentioning at least, I mean, the word mangrove or coastal area. So we don't want to make new law simply just to tackle one issue, but ride on whatever we have at the moment, or maybe strengthen or improve, right? So check these list of laws that you have in your country related to mangrove protection as well as conservation. But then again, like I mentioned earlier, Malaysia and many countries across the region, we are very friendly, I reckon. We sign whatever there are to be signed, international commitments like this. We cannot simply sign and not do anything on the ground, right? So there you go. Tailor all of this commitment on the ground related to the national and laws or state laws that we have. And of course, like mentioned earlier, this must be scientific based. I highlighted this in one of my op-eds before. And this is actually already mentioned by our speakers and panelists just now. And this is one from the godmother of mangrove research, I would call Professor Catherine Lovelock. Many of you know her, I reckon. So she highlighted in this one op-ed that this is the upcoming. This actually answers one of the questions just now as well. So both policy and research, right? So the science, yes, of course, it must be continued. I saw Professor Kathy Rayson also mention about this basic ecology, fundamental ecology of pollination, of mangrove morphology and physiology. That must be continued. So universities have role to play, meaning push and then maintain fundamental research on botany, on zoology, and of course not only focusing on applied technology, money-making courses, right? This must be maintained, and of course transforming or translating or turn it into a transdisciplinary research, right? I mean, involving community research, legal research, right? Law and policy research. And then, of course, what we are doing today, thank you again to Dr. Nehru and team and all of you participating as speakers, as panelists, as participants. What we are doing here is education, right? I mean, I see it that way. We communicate, we share, all of us share. And by educating, by communicating science and knowledge, we can. The intention is actually to change perception. Long time ago, you heard of this cliche phrase, wetlands are wastelands, right? I mean, in the US in the 70s up and across the globe. But it is changing, right? As now we know a lot more about the properties of wetlands all across the globe, particularly mangrove in our discussion today. So changing perception will eventually change decision making, right? So many of the students that I mentioned to you that they were born like 2000 onwards, right? 2004, 2005. They didn't know about tsunami. So we have to continue educating them. So I suggest to Dr. Nehru, please don't stop here today. Make this a consistent event, yeah, and try. And all boils down, I think this is a summary from the discussion today, all boils down to these 4 major points. I would say. So the end just now, we mentioned about governance and operation on the ground, how forestry manages, forestry department manages forest reserve. But then you must remember, not all mangroves fall or protected under under forestry department or related department in your countries, right? So look at this, find the major gaps, right? Some mangrove are put under maybe marine or fisheries department and other departments, right? Mangroves across this river, right? Rivers are monitored or managed by different department, mangroves, different department, and they don't communicate. So connect this link, right? That's very important to be done. And of course, research. I think today's discussion heavily involve all of us scientists and researchers. So we push for that. But then not just publishing journal articles, right? So there you go. Communicating with larger audience will be another angle that we have to like push for. And of course, participation. We know how important communities are in all of our efforts, yeah, today, in the past 10, 20 years, and in the future. So all of this must be strengthened. All of this must be connected. Yeah. So it cannot be done by one person, of course. And I know many of you at some point were like frustrated, yeah, with all these 4 components. Yeah. But don't. This is the message I got. I had this privilege to like speak to Dr. Jane Goodall. I mean, she's known as the ambassador of hope. Yeah. So it's not just being optimistic, yeah, but be hopeful as well. So and being optimistic or hopeful, we have to add the action and engagement component to that, right? So not just weeping, yeah, the past, yeah, of course we know the impact that face us and the impacts coming towards us in the future. So yeah, let's put it in good actions and engagements, yeah. And like I mentioned, not just Dr. Ben, not just Dr. Virni, yeah, not just Dr. Frida working hard on this. It actually involves all of us, all of you watching today, yeah, regardless of your background, academic background, regardless of your role in the society now, you have important decision to make. Yeah, bankers. Yeah, if you are an historian, yeah, if you are a geographer, of course, right? If you are a microbiologist too, right? So there you go. This connects all, and this is a formula I proposed. I mean, when we started off my mangrove, and I'm pretty sure there are a lot of international, national scale network like this. So let's make use of this, and maybe Dr. Nehru, one of the way forward from this discussion is we identify not just past and ongoing research and what research next to be done, but also identifying networks and researchers like this. Yeah? So understanding what other countries are doing, maybe a quick review of what we get today as a good start, and then continuing on with suggestions for global. And then there are global organizations as well that we can like speak with. Of course, there are networks like GMA, like IUCN Mangrove Specialist Group. So there are they are existing unions or networks out there. So let's get in touch with all of them. Yeah? So all in all, these may be, I mean, as you all, I highlighted before, mangrove actually, when we protect, when we conserve mangrove, we are actually answering all 17 SDGs. Yeah. And we are midway now, 2025, to reach the 2030 aim of SDG. But 2030, 2010 to 2030, 2020 to 2030 also is the decade, UN Ocean Decade, yeah? Decade of Ocean Science, and also decade for ecosystem restoration. We are midway now, but where are we in achieving all these 3, at least, United Nations grand mission, I would say, and all 3 involve mangrove, mangrove protection. So I guess that's my 10 minutes. And of course, a lot more to speak. Oh, sorry. This is just the end QR code if you want to get connected to me, and then of course to the My Mangrove network that I mentioned earlier. So thank you very much again, everyone, every panelist, for all the inputs, speakers for all the inputs, and participants for your participation and quite very interesting and important questions addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your thoughtful conclusion. Your remarks have been provided with us the powerful summary of challenges and opportunities, responsibilities that we have shared in protecting the mangrove ecosystem. So now we have come to the conclusion of today's event, and it is now time to express our gratitude to all those who have made this gathering possible. For delivering the word of thanks, I would like to invite Dr. Nehru Prabhakaran. So please join, sir.
Thank you, Shamna. Thank you, Aldri. I mean, what a wonderful 2.5 hours of sessions. So, like I mentioned in the welcome, so it was just 1 month ago we all met in Abu Dhabi where we discussed about it, and then it's such a quick turnaround of events. And we are very grateful to all the speakers who agreed in a very short notice and making this event much more insightful and engaging. And like I mentioned in the beginning, this is just there are so many studies happen. There are so many people working across Southeast Asia and Asia, looking at the long-term effects of tsunami and how the policies have changed since the 2004 tsunami. But when you look at any document, there is hardly any document available put together how at the regional level, overall the regional level, how this is influencing at the huge, larger landscape level. So this may be a one step in that particular angle, and try to get in touch with all the people who work exclusively on this particular research area. And I'm really glad that Professor Kathiresan could also join us today. Like many other researchers, I'm very grateful to all the researchers. Dr. Muhammad Basuni from the Mangrove Center of Excellence from Indonesia, and our Director Wildlife Institute of India, Mr. Virendra Tiwari, and other speakers, Hamza Latif, and Professor Sunanda Kodikara, and Aldri. Of course, the wonderful panel discussion shared by Birni as well as Benjamin, and very nicely coordinated by Frida. I'm really thankful to all the individuals who made this event much more productive and possible. And more importantly, there are many people who behind the scenes, and only Shamna was still in the scene. So very, very thankful to my team at Wildlife Institute of India, Shamna, Anup Raj Singh, and Vipin from the IT department of Wildlife Institute of India for keep a tap on all the issues and making sure no technical glitch happens during the session. And special thanks to Anisha Fitri and Anup for keeping notes on all the sessions. We look forward to put up a document from all the discussions today, and hopefully to bring out valuable, insightful document, and then further this conversations. Thank you, everyone.
May I suggest for a group photo, Dr. Nehru?
Of course, Aldri without group photo, impossible.
So I kindly request everyone to on their video so we can take a photo.
Cheers. Aldri, hope you got it.
Yeah, I'm taking it, and I just saw my good friend there from Singapore, Dr. Daisuke Taira, also here, and many more there. Thank you very much for participating. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Una renda muna.
Oh.
That's Tamil, but I don't know in Hindi.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So with
Thank you,
that,
everyone.
we come to the end of this webinar on 2 decades of tsunami, how the mangrove ecosystems in Asia are doing. And I hope today's sessions have been as inspiring and insightful for you as they have been for me. And let us all continue to play our part in safeguarding these vital ecosystems and fostering their resilience for generations to come. Thank you once again for joining us today. Stay safe and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.